Good morning, fathers of daughters. This is Efrem Martin. Welcome to another live stream at Grow Dad YouTube channel. Mi amigos, bienvenidos. En aquí, hoy, gracias. All right, fathers, I welcome all fathers, regardless of your ethnic group, background, and or culture. Welcome all. Thank you for participating. Thank you for being here. Okay, fathers, we got another amazing live stream today. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do. We do. Today, fathers, we are going to be discussing parenting style. Let me repeat that. Fathers, what we are going to be discussing today is parenting style. So, fathers, I'm a girl dad. 4 adult daughters, 36, 30, 26, and 24. And as fathers of daughters, as girl dads, we're going to learn our parenting style, right? And more than likely, our parenting style is going to be totally different than the mother of our daughter's parenting style. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing, fathers. It's a good thing, right? Because I think when it comes to parenting style, fathers, we have a way of doing things, right? It's going to be different. Mothers are more nurturers, and fathers are more disciplinarians because we provide protection and safety within the household unit for the family. So, the most important thing I believe, though, when it comes to parenting style is making sure that both parents are on the same page. Okay? Because if both parents are not on the same page, what can end up happening is you can have a split. And between mother and father, you can have a split. And within that split, you can have a divide. And within that divide, you can have problems. And within them problems, a lot of times there may not be solutions. Because what ends up happening is if there's a split, divide, and there's problems, chances are mothers and fathers are going to be going at each other. They're going to be taking parenting a certain way. They're going to believe that they're both right. And they're going to stand on that. Okay? So fathers of daughters, what we have to do, right, is we have to pay attention to our daughters, our kids, and we have to come up with our style, right? Not their mothers, our style. How are we going to parent our children? What does that look like? What does it sound like? How do we implement, right? And our kids are going to teach us how to parent them. Trust me, they are, right? Fathers of daughters, we have to make sure our minds are open, our ears are open, and our hearts are open. We have to be willing to make adjustments, fathers of baby girls. We have to be willing to look outside of the box, fathers of baby girls. We cannot allow society to keep us within a circle on how we're going to parent our baby girls. Because if we do that, a lot of times we're not going to become objective. And what ends up happening is we're going to become victims of society. We're going to allow society to come into our house and our homes and tell us how to parent our children. See, I believe in fathers. I believe that fathers have the tools. I believe the fathers are equipped to raise their baby girls. I believe that because I've done it 4 times. I didn't get lucky 4 times, fathers of daughters. Had to put in a lot of work, okay? So I'm reaching out to all fathers, regardless of your ethnic group, background, and or culture, because cultures are going to do things differently. Ethnic backgrounds are going to do things differently. Religious backgrounds are going to do things differently. But the one thing that all men have in common is our commonality as men. We're the head of the house. We have to put our best foot forward. We have to be consistent in the rearing of our children particularly when it comes to our baby girls. The example that we are going to be setting for our baby girls, we're their first love, fathers of daughters. So they're going to look at us for protection and safety. They're going to look at us for leadership. They're going to watch how their fathers move. They're going to check out their fathers, whether they're being manipulative, whether their dads are hotheads, whether their dads are laid back. They're going to take all this in, and they're going to process it as little girls. And they're going to figure out how to build this relationship with their fathers. So I always say in my videos, fathers, we have an incredible opportunity here, right? We have an incredible opportunity to lead by example. We do. And we need to lead by example. And we have to be consistent in that leading because our baby girls are always watching us, right? So when it comes to parenting style, there are cultural differences, right? There's religious differences. And it's all good because our kids are going to be coming across kids depending on their geographics and their demographics of different cultures, languages, religious beliefs, all these things. And that's a good thing because what we want our children, our daughters, we want them to be well-rounded as human beings. We want them to grow in environments that are not exclusive, but inclusive. And the reason that I say that is because the more that our children have in coming into contact with other children that don't look like them or talk like them or practice like them, the more their minds are going to be open. I raised my daughters not to be independent women. I raised them to be free thinkers. And the reason that I did that is because I want my daughters, I wanted them to challenge everything and not accept everything. And I think that that's important because when you challenge everything and not accept everything, chances are you have a moral compass and you have a ground to stand on when it comes to your ethics. And that's what we do when we guide our children, fathers. Okay, fathers, I have some excellent videos today. I've done a lot of good research. Grow Dad YouTube channel is all about education through instruction, information that I provide week in and week out, fathers. It's available on YouTube. The research that I go through and the videos that I come across are amazing, fathers. I have to pinch myself sometimes because when I'm doing my research, I'm just amazed at the resources that are available in front of me. So it's an absolute pleasure for me to be able to do this research because this is what I do. I love doing research, right? My background is 20 years in the criminal justice system, 10 years in K-12 education. So I'm a legal researcher by profession. Love to research. Love to research. So fathers, let's have an open mind. Let's have an open spirit this morning. Let's take a look at these videos. Let's process them, right? Let's use these resources. And fathers, I always encourage you, always do your own research. Don't listen to me. Use my videos and my book, Daddy's Girls, which is available at Amazon.com. Use them as a resource. My book, Daddy's Girls, and my videos, my live streams, they're complementary of each other, fathers of daughters, okay? That's how E. Martin gets down. This is my way of giving back to fathers. I want to see all fathers have great and amazing relationships with their baby girls, with their children. That's one of my goals, is for fathers, through our commonality, to understand our sense of urgency that we must have in building long-term, sustainable relationships with our baby girls. That's one of my goals. Okay, fathers, I welcome you. So let's get into these videos, fathers, and let's have an open mind and open spirit, okay? Let's do it. This is video number 1, fathers.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be discussing the different approaches to parenting styles and how they differ across different cultures. I'd like to begin by discussing the research done by Diana Barwin on how to understand the effects of parenting. There are three different types. There's authoritarian parenting, authoritative parenting, and permissive parenting. Authoritarian parenting includes strict rules and few open dialogue with the child. This is seen as the most harsh form of parenting because sometimes it seems a little bit too strict. Authoritative parenting is more expectations of the child's maturity levels. This type of parenting encourages more independence while still having boundaries. With this style of parenting, the child is encouraged to express their feelings and learn how to cope properly with those feelings. The last type of parenting is the permissive parenting. This is where the parents are very involved with their children. This style of parenting involves a lot of time and responsiveness with the child, but with few limits to the children's behaviors. Depending on the culture, certain parenting styles, like authoritarian, might seem cold and harsh, whereas some might see it as normal and successful. For example, in China, parenting styles fit more under the category of authoritarian parenting. In their culture, this form of parenting works and seems to have successful results when it comes to their children's success academically. On the other hand, Western cultures are more likely to use the warmth and responsiveness method with their children than are in Asian cultures. Different parenting styles all have various outcomes across different cultures. There isn't really a wrong or right answer um, to like which parenting style is the perfect one. Every culture has different beliefs and different opinions, which makes us all unique. A study was done on how places like China or Korea had high success rates with how their children performed in schools. They usually use the strong parental controlling methods, which again seem to have different success rates in schools. On the other hand, European American students viewed that any type of pressure from the mother is a negative approach. They feel that pressure from the mother makes the child feel unsupported. Every culture has different perspectives and different effects on how one parents their child, but again, there really isn't a wrong or right answer.
Okay, fathers, what are your thoughts? So, I'm a former United States Marine Corps veteran, fathers of baby girls, and I've been blessed enough. I've traveled the world to over 60 countries and 6 continents. And one of the things I learned from traveling the world is just the the one thing all humans have in common. We're human beings, and I learned a lot from all the cultures of the countries that I've been to, and just the different parenting styles. We're here in the West. We're Americans. We are the only country in the world that allows all other countries to come within our borders and live together and try to get along together and try to share together. There's no other country like that in the world but the United States of America. So it's interesting when you come across all the different cultures and the different perspectives, because we have to be mindful and respectful of other religious groups and how they raise their children, right? There's no singular way to do it. The examples that we're giving here, this, there could be 5 different ways, there could be 10 different ways. What I can tell you is in my research, though, I wanted to make sure that I want to make it efficient and I want to make it simplistic. I try not to when I'm doing my research. Yes, I'll use doctors, I'll use PhDs. There's a lot of information that's out there, but I want to make it simple for parents, fathers of daughters. So it's efficient to follow and it makes sense. And it may propel you to want to do your own research. So that was an excellent video. What I'm going to do next is I have 3 videos that I'm going to show back to back to back, talking about cultural differences when it comes to parenting style. They're excellent videos. I really enjoy doing the research on this particular live stream because I came across so many videos I've watched. I watch probably close to 50 videos doing, in preparation for this live stream, because it intrigues me just how different we are, but we're the same because we're human. So that was an excellent first video, Fathers of Daughters. And like I said, the next 3 videos are going to be back to back to back. Okay? All right, fathers, let me get it ready. Or let me get them ready, rather.
Hello from Nairobi, Kenya.
Okay, fathers, videos 2, 3, and 4.
Hello from Nairobi, Kenya.
Oy, oy, oy. That's an animated hello for a Brazilian.
We are Korean Canadians currently living in Canada.
I'm Kalayu.
The rise of social media means that there are a lot of opportunities to judge and to be very critical of other people's parenting styles.
Like Brazilian moms, or not even moms, have no filter about what they think you should do to your kid.
You kind of have the lioness mom who's out there, hardworking, whether she's single mom or married. And then you have what we kind of call the elephant mom, who's more stay at home and the kids are always kind of closest to them. But I think that because there's more support in the stronger community, I think there's less anxiety about the perfect way to raise your child.
What we do here in Hong Kong is that we hire confinement nannies that stay with us at our place. And while you need the rest and sleep, they're there to help bathe and take care of your child. And also they do really awesome breast massages just for the milk to come. It's actually an amazing thing.
Children do what you do. They don't do what you tell them to do.
Yeah, we would never discipline our children by hitting them. It's against the law in Sweden.
We talk to our children.
Yeah.
No one's worried or scared to give their kid a little bit of a smack. That's really not frowned upon here. So you see it all the time when you go out in public. If a kid is throwing a tantrum and the mom's had a bit of enough, she'll give him a little, smack on the bum.
My father was very strict and he did not spare the rod. He used the rod.
I think a lot of Korean parents use the rod.
Physical punishment has been widely accepted. And I think a lot of that is, it is changing.
In Canada, it's actually illegal to spank your child in any other way except a palm
On the bottom.
to the butt.
In China, for me, the most culturally interesting thing about parenting is that the parents of the mother or father, to be honest, if you're a Chinese guy, are always involved in your child's life.
It's like a bird never leave their nest. The whole big family just never leave their nest. Like even we have kids, my parents still think we're little kids.
Yeah.
Until probably one day they couldn't do anything.
Didn't say it was fun, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that's just the case.
You don't just raise your child yourself. You have a whole community to help you raise your child, to look after your child. There are a lot of people that I grew up with or I went to school with who were actually raised by their grandparents. It's not unusual to have an auntie or a neighbor look after your child if you're working and the neighbor, is there during the day.
There's so much outreach from the community and people just love kids, and you never feel, you can go anywhere with children and babies and they always get really great treatment everywhere.
In Brazil, the parenting style is relaxed but very outspoken. They do have a more, it takes a village approach to parenting than maybe the rest of the world.
In the Western world, it's kind of, I guess, it's seen as appropriate if when you're speaking to a child, you're supposed to bend down low and be, level eye to eye, speaking to the child.
Yeah.
But no, maybe in Korea, no, it's more so like you just look down at the child and go, hey, I'm boss and you look up to mine. I think that kind of plays in
Right. To how they
overarching or underpinning kind of influence that changes all the interactions
in the culture.
in
Yeah.
the culture. Yeah.
So when I was conducting my research, I drew on a model which examined parenting styles, and this was by somebody called Diana Barmbrind, who talked about 3 different parenting styles. So there was authoritarian, authoritative, and permissive. So I use that in my research, and I do recognize that it's not always easy to categorize, but from what my analysis was saying, this was the best approach to analyze it. And some of my respondents indicated that they'd had an authoritarian parenting style, whereby the parents were very strict, they had very high expectations of them, there wasn't so much flexibility over certain things, lots of emphasis on discipline. But whereas others had had a more authoritative parenting style, where things were a bit more flexible, there was more sort of agreement in terms of rules and regulations, but then they also had high expectations of their children and their academic outcomes, but none of them were permissive, none of the parents were permissive. But in both cases, the children or the participants came out very well academically, and also in terms of their professional attainment as well. Again, there are pathologic or negative ideas about the way in which Black parents raise their children. And the dominant idea is that they use an authoritarian approach which restricts their individuality and really has a negative impact on the children's behavior, which translates into the education system. So a lot of research tends to reaffirm this, but I'm arguing that actually this isn't necessarily the case, because not all Black parents do use an authoritarian approach. They may be more flexible or authoritative in their approaches. And also, even if they do use an authoritarian approach, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because what this does is enables the children to develop discipline in other areas of their life, their academics, when it comes to just reaching goals, etc. So I'm challenging this perception in my research, and I'm arguing from personal experience, and also from the people that I'd spoken to. A lot of them were saying that they'd had this authoritarian approach, and yes, sometimes they resisted against it, and they didn't always like what was said and the way that things were done. But at the same time, this benefited them, and this has helped them academically and in terms of their careers. But for those who didn't experience it, again, who had an authoritative approach whereby the parents were more flexible, they gave them more autonomy, but they still had high expectations of their abilities, they did just as well as those children who'd experienced an authoritarian method. If anything, the authoritarian children did better because of that extra discipline that they had.
quick programming note before we jump in, and this will sound familiar if you've listened to episode 1, which, while not absolutely required, I really would encourage you to do because these discussions really do build on each other. But either way, just want to note at the top that this discussion was recorded in December 2019, before coronavirus, before George Floyd, before a whole host of things that really characterize our present moment. So if you notice moments where timely examples are conspicuously absent, that's why. But we think that the topics we touch on are more relevant than ever, and appreciate you taking the time to listen along. So with that in mind, on to the show.
Welcome to episode 2 of the series Parenting in a New Context, Strategies for Practitioners Supporting Refugee and Immigrant Caregivers. It's a podcast series made for and by mental health practitioners about serving refugee and immigrant families. And once again, it's a collaboration between the Refugee Trauma and Resilience Center at Boston Children's Hospital, the Center for Resilient Families at the University of Minnesota, and the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. I'm your host, Trevor Bourne, with the Center for Resilient Families, and in this episode, I'm really pleased to be joined by 2 team members from the Refugee Trauma and Resilience Center, Osab Issa, a clinical social worker and program coordinator, and Emma Cardelli, a research associate and clinical psychologist. And they're here to talk about the cultural dynamics that can influence parenting among refugee and immigrant caregivers. Now, if you're just tuning in, you may want to go back and listen to episode 1, which is a conversation with our colleagues Luna Mulder and Jeff Winter about some of the foundational concepts we'll be building on today. Osab and Emma, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's wonderful being here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so 2 terms that come up a lot in your work are cultural values and cultural expectations. So before we get into the conversation, could you briefly explain what you mean by those 2 terms?
Sure, Trevor. Cultural values are the core principles and ideals upon which an entire community exists. These values are often not obvious to outsiders. In contrast, for group members themselves, these cultural values usually dictate the way they move through the world and are infused into everything they do.
Yeah, in my Somali culture, religious education is valued and considered to be critical for children's healthy development. And I believe sometimes it is a protective factor.
Absolutely. With regard to cultural expectations, a person's cultural expectations typically reflect commonly held standards of what is acceptable or unacceptable, important or unimportant, right or wrong within a community or society. There can be more of a value judgment attached to cultural expectations.
Yeah, and again, I think in my Somali culture, especially now, those of us who are here in the United States, girls are not allowed to have sleepovers, and that's driven by the need to protect the young women. And I think back home, there was not such a thing as a sleepover. It's like you go to your uncle's house or you go to your friend's house and the whole community knew each other. It was fine.
So when we have different norms like this or practices or values, how does that shape the nature or character of parenting across different cultures?
So as I see it, cultural values, expectations, and practices are typically passed down from one generation to the next and reflect historical ways of being. From a parenting perspective, the way we were parented tends to impact how we then subsequently parent our children. They guide routines and rituals at home, inform communication style between parent and child, shape disciplinary practices, all that stuff.
Absolutely. And in my Somali culture, parents typically communicate to young girls that one of their primary responsibilities is to care for the household chores, such as cleaning, cooking, and really kind of being the young mother to everyone. If a young Somali girl is not fulfilling this responsibility, then there tend to be a disappointment on the part of the mother, as well as sort of the larger community, maybe, because there's an assumption that made that either the daughter has become too westernized or the mother is not teaching the skills to her daughter.
Now, we're thinking specifically about families with a refugee or immigration experience. So how does this act of migration impact these values and these expectations?
Yeah, when you are in a country that is different than yours, there is a feeling that you are almost alone in having to reinforce cultural values and expectations in your children, particularly if you have children. Whereas when they are living in their native country, the entire community is really supporting with each other on this, instilling these values in their kids. And here in America, parents are really alone, and this adds additional stress.
Absolutely. Yeah, their values might not be held by the collective and their resettlement community in the same way. And what I mean by that is that the people around them, their neighborhood or community at large, might hold cultural values with regard to parenting that differ greatly from their own. Consequently, there can be this loss of support system around certain parenting values, norms, and practices secondary to migration, which is, I think, Osab, why you were saying they can be really alone and isolated.
Yeah. And there's another piece. Kids growing up in a new culture might push back the cultural values because they are comparing their new culture to sort of they're making comparison of like their parents' culture and the culture that they are growing up. So they're challenging the cultural values that are important to the family in a way that wouldn't if they were back home.
And yeah, we touched on this idea of acculturation and acculturative stress briefly in episode 1, basically how this process of joining a different culture can create tension between parents and children. I know you've done a lot of work on this. Can you explain that concept a little more and some of the work you've done to address it?
Sure, I'll give it a try. Osab, feel free to chime in. So refugee and immigrant children tend to acculturate to American norms and practices faster than their parents, in part because they spend so much of their week within the American school system, where they're constantly exposed to commonly held American values, norms, and practices. Since the parents are not connected to the school system to the same extent as their kids, they just don't have access to this content to nearly the same degree. This can cause parents to feel ineffective, disempowered, and less knowledgeable as their children learn more and more about American culture and norms, in addition to just feeling more distant or disconnected from their children. Furthermore, in response to their children's just rapid rate of acculturation, and I think in reaction to all the changes that families are asked to make secondary to resettling in a new country, refugee parents can hold fairly tightly to cultural values and norms congruent with how they themselves were raised. And this dynamic can create a tension between the child who really wants to fit in and belong, and the parent who in many ways did everything they could do to get their child to a safe place where elements of that child's culture of origin can actually still be a core element of the child's identity. Some families struggle with conflict, a lack of communication, or secret keeping as a result. These families can often benefit from mental health or psychosocial support services to help parents and children navigate this acculturative tension and align around a common goal.
Absolutely. And I think just to add, I think that because the structure of the way that they live right now is so different, that there is just a less family time in here, where back home, you have no choice. Like there was families were always together. And it was seen as really as a protective factor. It was a good thing. And here, just the reality of kids being in school all day or people working, there's just less chance to be together. And then that alone creates conflict because they're like, okay, how do we now communicate?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in our clinical work at the Refugee Trauma and Resilience Center, we've developed a treatment model called Trauma Systems Therapy for Refugees, or TSTR, a multi-tiered, empirically supported behavioral health intervention that includes family work in order to address both issues of safety and acculturative stress within the family system. The family sessions are focused on teaching parenting skills in a culturally responsive manner, facilitating open communication, and increasing empathy and perspective taking across the entire family system. As consultants in the model, Osab and I are often teaching clinicians and cultural brokers strategies for helping both the parent and child better understand the stresses and demands on one another, in addition to better understanding the ways in which they signal their love and care, the ways in which they speak their own love languages that sometimes get lost as a result of acculturation.
Yes, it is all about holding both perspectives without judging anyone and finding a balance. As a practitioners in the West, a lot of models, it's really center the individual. I think, and parents might be coming from a culture, especially refugee parents might be coming from a culture where really not only one child matters, but everyone matters. Just because it's really their collectivism culture where, like, if you're going to treat one child, just treat the whole family. Yeah.
Now, I know that there's also this dynamic where, for instance, an American-born provider might have their own implicit biases about what are and are not acceptable parenting practice. Can you speak to that and sort of the tension that can cause?
Sure. So I think some of the American born providers we work with carry their own implicit biases around what is and is not acceptable parenting practices, which makes perfect sense. Again, as we were talking about before, you parent in the way in which you were parented, or you think what is right oftentimes reflects your own kind of cultural values, right? So these providers can have a hard time understanding from a refugee parent's perspective why the parent doesn't want the child going out at a certain time, or want their child involved in certain activities or wearing certain clothes. As a result, when there's a significant acculturation gap between the parent and child, the provider, without any malintent, can sometimes overly identify with the perspective of the child, wanting to connect with American culture, and not give enough space to the parent's perspective, which is a really important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So for a provider that's working with these families that are dealing with this challenge of family acculturation, what are some concrete things they can do to mitigate that stress?
I think simply just acknowledge that being a parent is a difficult job. It's not an easy job, and particularly raising kids in a new country. Support them. Don't come across as judgmental, but really sympathetic and saying, if you're not a parent, just say, I'm not a parent. I have no idea what that role is like, but how can I be supportive? And also empower their voice. I think often parents, because of lack of language or lack of just not being familiar with this culture, I think sometimes their power and kind of their knowledge that they bring gets lost. And I think they're often made feel like that they don't know enough, or they're less capable of raising their kids, when in fact they are.
I couldn't agree more. And I also do think that psychoeducation with parents is another important intervention strategy. It can be important to help a refugee parent understand common American norms and practices that a child is constantly being exposed to at school, again, because they don't have the same access. On the flip side, you can also do work on helping to educate the child, particularly if the child is an adolescent or older, on where the parent is coming from. A lot of refugee children might have been born in refugee camps and therefore not have as much access to the parents' culture of origin. They weren't exposed in the same way. Their life, in another country was really confined to a refugee camp, which was not even in the country in which a parent was born. So I think that's another important piece.
Absolutely. Just to add that, I think that, yes, I absolutely agree that education is powerful. And I think that often because kids know, they're smart, that once they hear, they have so much power. And so I think practitioners often try to advocate for the kids' wants and needs, when I think, in fact, that they could be this middle place of advocating for both, and sort of like, okay, how can they listen to each other?
Exactly.
And be at the center of that.
Oh, so a provider, you can sort of be a liaison essentially between these different perspectives.
Absolutely. And yes, within the TSTR model, the clinician and cultural broker are often facilitating family meetings so that there can be open communication and curiosity around both perspectives instead of judgment. You're liaisoning those different perspectives. In some cases, though, there may be so much tension when you're first starting off the clinical work that you have to work separately with the child and parents so that you can prepare both to be able to hear and hold the other's perspective with empathy and curiosity.
Absolutely, yeah. And really, not only, I would say the other message that cultural brokers and clinicians sometimes send, at least the ones when we provide consultation, is modeling.
Yes, in terms of them being from different cultures themselves.
Exactly, yes. And I think the cultural broker is sort of saying, like, especially if they spend most of their lives here, that, look, I am also someone that carries multicultural or more than one culture, and sort of facilitating, like, has not lost their culture. I think sometimes parents think that the longer you're in America, the sooner you will lose your culture.
Yes.
But that's really not true.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much, Osab and Emma, for your time today. We're going to take this understanding of the way that culture influences parenting and really build on it in episode 3, which is going to look at the ways that the experience of trauma impacts parenting and the particular impact of trauma on refugee and immigrant families. So be sure to tune into that and check out the show notes for links to learn more about what we've discussed today. Thank you for listening, and thank you again for joining me today.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, fabulous.
Okay, fathers, what are your thoughts on those 3 videos? Feel free to comment. And like I said, when I was doing the research for this live stream, I came across so many videos, amazing videos. And as you can see, in my lifetime, I was a dean of students in K-12 education, middle school, high school, and I was fortunate enough to meet 4 different groups of refugee kids. Had some Palestinian kids, had some Syrian kids, had some Somalian kids, and had some Afghani children in my lifetime, and amazing young people, and very disciplined kids, very centered kids, and they all had trauma because they were refugees. So, when it comes to parenting styles, fathers of daughters, we're going to come up with our own. Trust me, we are. As far as me and my baby girls, I'm more laid back. I'm like I said, I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, so I'm very disciplined. I've never had to raise my voice or yell at my daughters. And they'll tell you that. I'm going to eventually do a live stream with my daughters since they're adult women. And I'm going to let my audience ask them whatever they want. But working in the criminal justice system as a state of Colorado state juvenile probation officer, I had to take a totally different approach with my baby girls because of what I was dealing with every day professionally, seeing kids in the criminal justice system and seeing them get messed over and their families get messed over in the criminal justice system. And so I had to take a totally different approach. And I had examples in front of me on what was not going to happen to my family and my baby girls. So my personality, I'm just a real laid back man, real laid back human being, always have been. I'm very intentional, and my mind has always been open because I'm a free thinker. And that's how I taught my daughters to be free thinkers as well. I've always challenged everything and have not stood for everything. I'm going to question. I'm going to challenge that. That's just who I am as a human being, because I believe in getting answers. I believe in getting truth. And with the amount of information, there's both sides and there's the middle. So in order for me, the way I've lived my life, in order for me to make an informed decision, I got to have as much information as I can. I listen to everybody from all sides, and then I'll make my determination based on that. I don't believe in any of this fake news stuff and, the political. I'm not I don't do politics. I don't like politicians. I despise them. And I just believe in doing my own research and coming up with my own conclusions, looking at what's in front of me. I don't belong to a political party. I've always been an independent voter my entire life. So for me, politics is not a part of my life. And I've never made decisions based on a political party. So fathers, this is what's before us. And like I said, we have an incredible opportunity to come up with our parenting style and execute it effectively and efficiently. Okay, fathers, I've got 3 videos left. The next 2 videos is going to be showing, according to reports and according to research, the Netherlands, the Dutch, they happen to be the happiest country on the planet. It's interesting, very interesting. And the parenting styles in the Netherlands. So we're going to take a look at these next 2 videos. And then we got one after that, and then we'll wrap up this live stream, fathers. Okay, let's check them out.
study of well-being found that
Okay, fathers, next video.
the most recent UNICEF study of well-being found that of the 29 wealthiest industrialized countries in the world, children in the Netherlands are the happiest. The United States is near the bottom of that list. So what do Dutch parents know that we don't? The authors of the book, The Happiest Kids in the World, shared their secrets with NBC's Keir Simmons.
Rina Maya Costa lives in the Netherlands with her family. It's a far cry from the hectic pace of many families back home.
I'm not Dutch at all. Actually, I'm Filipino American from the San Francisco Bay Area. And then I ended up falling in love with a Dutch guy. And now I'm here.
When she became a parent, Rina was struck by the differences in Dutch family life compared with her pressurized childhood in the States, impressed by how independent and, above all, happy Dutch children seem. In the latest UNICEF study of well-being, Dutch children came out as the happiest out of 29 of the world's richest industrialized countries. America came 26th. Rina and her friend Michelle Hutchinson, a fellow expat, also married to a Dutch man, decided to dig in and explore what exactly is producing such contented kids. First, wait, is that chocolate?
Children even get to eat chocolate for breakfast.
For breakfast, not only children, adults too. It's all about moderation.
Independence and outside play are a near religion for Dutch parents, and nowhere is this more apparent than their love of biking. They bike everywhere.
As soon as I moved here, my husband got me a bike and he made me cycle on it in all weathers. And children are brought up with that.
Once they get to school, Dutch kids are also excelling there. That same report put the Netherlands at the top in educational achievement and participation. That high score might be surprising to American parents, given that students in the Netherlands aren't pushed to read and write at an early age and don't even start to get regular homework until their early teens.
I don't have homework. I have no homework.
We want them to be motivated. The motivation is more important than to push and put pressure on them.
Back in the US, child developmental psychologist Catherine Tamis-Lamonda says that the Dutch are on the right track.
Huge number of studies show that our motivation, children's motivation to do things, to be engaged, to learn about their world goes up when they make choices about what to do.
Do you want to get some flowers?
Seems like there are other factors too. On average, they work a 29-hour week here, and they have something called a mama or papa dag, which roughly translates as a day for mom or dad to spend with the children. Laura Van Gulik balances not just her kids on a bike, but also an intense career as an anesthesiologist with family time by taking Wednesdays off.
Have you sacrificed your career to be able to do this?
No, I don't feel I've sacrificed it, and I'm still doing my job in a very high level.
Do you think that this can really translate to if you're a parent back home in the US?
I think most definitely it can translate. I think that there's a lot of things that American parents can learn from the Dutch.
Rina and Michelle's top tips to going Dutch are: let children be independent, keep school low pressure, enjoy relaxed family time. And, of course, don't forget about those chocolate sprinkles. For today, Keir Simmons, NBC News, the Netherlands.
Aha, it's the chocolate sprinkles. Keir, thank you.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.
7.
Okay, give me a second, fathers. I'm trying to locate the video, this next video. I apologize. Give me a second here. Okay. I had it. Give me a second, fathers. It's not coming up. Okay, let me see. Let me try to. Ah, there it is. Apologize, fathers. I had to put it in a little bit different, but I found it. Okay. Give me a second here. Okay, fathers. Next video.
7 parenting styles from across the world that will leave parents astonished. From children napping outdoors to drinking wine with their dinner, some of the countries in the world have pretty unique ways to raise children. Japan. Young children from the age of 6 or 7 are expected to run errands for their families in Japan. Children walking around without a chaperone is extremely common due to the exceptionally low crime rates of the country. Even in cities like Tokyo, children are safe to run errands without supervision. Children take care of their needs themselves, may it be going to school or cleaning after themselves. From a very young age, Japanese children sweep and mop around their houses and even in their schools. Scandinavia. Scandinavian children are raised in the outdoors. Children sleep in the open even in the winters. It is quite normal for small babies to take naps outside in their strollers even when their strollers are unattended. The parents believe that napping in the open air keep their children healthy and well. China. Chinese babies are trained to use the restroom on their own as toddlers. They are taught to go to the restroom on the command of their parents' whistle. Most of the Chinese toddlers are completely potty trained by the young age of 2. Finland. Children in Finland don't start school until they turn 7. The first 7 years of life is called a time for creativity, where children are expected to play and be active. Their homework is minimal and holiday breaks are as long as 11 weeks, and yet the Finnish education manages to be one of the best in the world. The Great Britain. It is very common in the Great Britain for students to take gap years between high school and college. According to a 2017 statistic, around 230,000 students from the age of 18 to 25 took gap years to travel, work, or volunteer. Italy. Not only adults but children are served wine with their dinner in Italy. According to studies, children who are exposed to wine with dinner time are less likely to develop a harmful drinking pattern in adulthood. Wine is a part of Italy's culture and is included in the school curriculum for children since young age. While kids are raised as responsible drinkers in Italy, French kids are taught to be sophisticated eaters. They are expected to eat just like adults. They eat all the foods adults eat since a very young age. Africa. In many parts of Africa, children are not only raised by parents, but also their extended families. Even non-relatives take part in raising a child and happy to help out the parents. It is pretty common for mother to share breast milk among children even if the child is not theirs.
Okay, fathers, what are your thoughts in those last two videos? Like I said, Grow Dad YouTube channel. We're all about education, information, and instruction. That's what I bring through my YouTube channel. I'm proud of it. I'm consistent with it. I live stream every week. So fathers, it's interesting when you start looking at different cultures. And I, for one, since I've traveled around the world, I have absolutely no problem looking at a culture for what it is and making adjustments, because I can tell you some of the things that you just saw, I definitely use for my own daughters, and they worked. Even though I was in the United States of America, being raised in the West, I take from other cultures and I implement, and they worked for my baby girls. I'm telling you that right now. So I didn't raise my baby girls traditionally the way most Americans raise their kids. I didn't. And it worked. So I mentioned earlier, I had to take a different approach working in the criminal justice system. So I looked at all of this, and it's information. You don't have to do any of it. Okay? I just believe the more information that fathers have when it comes to their parenting style, the better decisions they're going to be able to make. We're not a monolith in my community. As a Black father, we're not a monolith in the Black community. We're not. We're different. We're going to raise our kids different. That's what it is. So not being a monolith, understanding the available resources that are before me and what works in other countries and other continents, I got to take a look at that. Maybe there's something there I can pull from that will help my children. And it did. Okay. The one thing I never understood about the United States of America, being a Black American, the one thing I never understood, we're an English only nation. On the continent of North America, you have Mexico to the south. You have Canada to the north. To the north of us, we have French speakers. To the south of us, we have Spanish speakers. And in the middle of the United States, we're English speakers. I do not understand for the life of me, because I've traveled the world extensively. In all the countries I go to, they speak multiple languages. For the life of me, being a Black American, I don't understand why we're not a trilingual language, trilingual country. I'm sorry. That makes absolutely no sense. French to the north, Spanish to the south. We're in the middle. And we're monolingual. As young people say, that's dumb, mister. That's dumb. That's really stupid. And I don't understand it. I speak Spanish. Had to learn it, but I speak it. And it makes absolutely no sense to me how we have French to the north, Spanish to the south. We're in the middle. We're on one continent, and we're monolingual. Make it make sense. Okay, fathers, we have one more video, and then we're going to wrap up this live stream. Okay, fathers, this is the last video, and then we'll wrap up this live stream. Thank you for your participation today. Appreciate you.
There's something that we hear from parents quite often, and I'm going to even be a little gender stereotypical with this. the mom will say, like, oh, let's accommodate. This is too hard for you right now. Let's do this instead.
Yeah.
Be flexible. And the dad, and I'm thinking heterosexual relationships, I'm like being super stereotypical right now. And the dad is like, you're too flexible. You're not preparing our child for the world. How do you hold both of those truths at the same time? Because there's a purpose behind both of those. We need to be understanding, and also we need to teach skills.
Yes. Great question. And I get that all the time when I'm doing parent coaching. I almost always have that scenario. And I think both can coexist. I think so often we approach situations as either or has to be the truth when it could be and. So it's okay that mom is a little bit soft on the child, and it's okay that dad's a little bit hard on the child. Like both of those can be okay. I think when we have that dichotomy and we have those opposites type of parenting, sometimes that can actually be a huge benefit, because that brings about balance in the home. So how I think we can balance that out is by being able for the parents to be on the same page in terms of their approach. To say, hey, the mom, for example, in this scenario, could be the empathic, listening, validating person. I know that this situation is really hard for you. I knew it hurt your feelings when blank happened. I'm really sorry that happened to you. And then dad can then tag team, you're it kind of thing, is like, yeah, I know that was rough. So when that happens, what can you do in the future? So that when people are gossiping about you, for example, what can you do differently so that you don't feel so hurt by it in the future? So then you're having that validation piece coming in, and then you can bring in, okay, let's come up with some solutions for that, so that you can feel like you're building more resilience and grit for the future, so that you don't get so hurt by the situation, because it's going to happen. Rejection is going to happen. People saying bad things about you is going to happen. You're going to fail. Those things are going to happen. So just staying in your emotion isn't going to help you deal with it. Being able to have an action plan and a solution is actually going to help you. So I actually can see both parents, even though they're approaching it differently, can actually be a good tag team situation to help the child move forward past that situation. So I don't see it as necessarily bad.
That's interesting. As you're saying all that, I realize, so the scenario Cecilia kind of laid out there, maybe we know some people that are like that live in our house, and that might be sitting right here actually talking to you. But we both have kind of an understanding for each other. And I think we do get into this role of I think she should be doing it my way, and she thinks I should be doing it her way. And I like what you're talking about. We can both come at it with our own approaches, but we still have the cohesive principle, I guess, that we're moving towards the same philosophy. Yeah. And it's interesting because I started thinking it really takes trust between each other. I have to trust that what she's doing is the right thing, and I trust that she's thinking about it. And the same way she has to trust what I'm doing, I'm thinking it through, and that I'm doing, whatever it is that I'm doing. Who knows what I'm doing sometimes, but that's an interesting relationship that the couple has to come to. I mean, and then of course, if you're single parenting, that's a whole challenge in itself. I really I appreciate that approach, and I can see value in that rather than trying to fix each other. And then all of a sudden we're in this weird dynamic while we're trying to talk to the kiddo about the difficulty they're having, and in the meantime we're figuring our stuff out. So that's really interesting. I value that a lot.
Well, and I see that with couples in a partnership or a marriage, but I also see that across cultures, because sometimes if you have two people in a relationship that are come from completely different cultures or ethnic backgrounds, their approach is also going to be very different. And I have several families like that as well too, where we have the dad usually who's if he's Black or West Indian, from the Caribbean, or African, and his very specific type of cultural mindset, with a white mom, for example. And that's a very different kind of mindset. And then both of them often will clash with it, and seeing, well, again, the usually if it's a Black dad, West Indian dad, African dad, they're thinking about, just suck it up, move on. That was the mindset that, especially, and it's generational too. So depending on how your mindset, how you grew up, and the kind of dismissive attitude many of us felt like we received from our own parents, then that's the kind of parenting then we tend to pass on. And so that makes it very hard for a child who's highly sensitive to have a parent who thinks that way, because many times parents didn't learn about this type of temperament. They were told that you're being too soft and you got to toughen up your kid. And so that those clashes can happen too. So it can be between like a mom and a dad. It can also be between within a culture, two different cultures as well too, can clash when they're raising a child. So we have to just be aware of where the messages that we're getting from how we were brought up, and then how we're bringing that into the situation, because many people don't prepare for how they're going to parent. They just parent the way they were parented. Yeah. And that doesn't always work out too well.
Yeah.
Or they know they don't want to parent the way they were parented. And so then they're just like,
or then they swing like
way, exactly.
Right.
And that's not helpful either.
No.
Or they just like let go. And then that's also like frustrating for them, because then they don't know what to do.
Okay, fathers. Parenting style. The journey is real, fathers. The journey is real. So, fathers, I hope that I was able to bring something to you today to help you understand our sense of urgency in building long-term sustainable relationships with our baby girls. It's one of my goals, fathers. And like I said, the research I did on this live stream, I really enjoyed this live stream. All my live streams are good, but this one right here, I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoy them all. This is what I do as a girl dad. Okay, fathers. So another live stream. Another live stream. I'm done. And I appreciate you, fathers. Hang in there. Keep your heads up. Kiss them babies. Love them babies. Be consistent in their lives. Embrace them. Validate them. Tell them you love them. Show them you love them. Okay? Fathers, the journey is real. And parenting style will make us dig deep. It will really make us dig deep as fathers of baby girls. Okay, fathers. Mi amigos. Hasta próxima semana. Adios. Okay, fathers. You know the drill. Until next week, I'm out. I'll holla at you. Peace.